I need some tires, but which ones?
Today's video will be talking tires because that dreaded time that we all fear finally snuck up on me, and I had to get some brand new tires here for the Cybertruck. So in the video, I'll discuss exactly how much I paid to get the new set I got, and I'll talk about how many miles I got on this set and what factors went into choosing what I ended up putting on the truck itself. So just to cut right to the chase, I ended up going with the Bridgestone Dual Year, and I'll talk about why. So my truck, being a Foundation Series, came with a tire that looks like this. This is the Goodyear, the all-terrain, that has the special little tread on the outside,
While still being fairly aggressive on the actual tread.
so this was ultimately a pretty good tire for me, all said and done. And although I might have pushed it maybe 1,000 to maybe 2,000 miles long, I ended up getting just over 30,000 miles on these guys. In fact, I had 30,005 miles literally when I pulled up to the tire shop. All right, so some positives about this tire. First of all, it is the all-terrain, which of course came with the Foundation Series truck, as I mentioned. So it's a real aggressive looking tire. In fact, I feel like it gives the Cybertruck a little bit of street cred, so to speak, a rougher look than what it might have with the shiny, sleek, smooth surfaces. And the fact that I was able to get 30,000 miles out of it proves it's a pretty long life tire. Obviously, that's a pretty good plus. Now, I have two Rivians, and both of those have not exceeded more than
20,000 miles.
with the Pirelli Scorpions that they come with. So I'm actually pretty happy with all said and done with the 30,000 I got off these. Now, in doing some kind of an experiment, I never rotated these. They stayed in the exact same position the whole 14 months, 30,000 miles I had them. Now, with that being said, the back tires did wear a little bit faster, which was maybe a small surprise to me, but they did. They wore faster than the other ones. I probably, if I would have rotated them, maybe could have snuck another 1,000, maybe 1,500 miles out of them. But that being said, these were still about time. I had a little tread left on these, but the back ones had even less of a tread, and actually they were starting to look potentially bald here on the outsides. Which does get me to the point where I feel like for probably 6 to 8 months, I probably ran mine with too low of a PSI. I felt like they ran better at a much higher, 55 to almost 60 PSI. So even being an EV, that was higher than what I've been used to my whole life and higher than what I've expected even in my other electric vehicles. So I do feel like once I started carrying a higher PSI, that 55 to 60 range, my tires actually wore a little bit more even. Now, the other benefit of the Goodyear is a lot of people sell them and it has that name. It's hard to go too wrong with a Goodyear tire. But now some of the downsides. They were a little on the loud side. Now, that being said, it didn't bother me a whole lot, but I had several people who drove my truck or even passengers that just noticed, hey, what's that noise? And it was just a little bit of just road noise. Now, that being said, they do have the standard
Little foam strips on the inside of the tire, which have become pretty common for most EVs, especially higher-end EVs.
And another factor was the price. They were more expensive, and part of that is they are all-terrain tires. Now, I do occasionally go off-road, not a lot, but I do drive in snow a lot, being in here in Colorado. I go to the mountains on a pretty regular basis, and I need a good tire. And although I don't necessarily buy a snow tire, I never buy a tire that's not at minimum all season. So a snow tire, all season, all-terrain, I kind of like that idea. I was okay with it being an all-terrain tire. I just didn't know what that markup was from an all-season to all-terrain, and if it was worth that markup for the limited amount of time I actually do go off-road. And then the last downside is these all-terrain compared to the regular all-season that Tesla had, I get about 5% less range per trip. So I actually did a lot of homework on these. I read a lot of blogs, Reddit, everywhere else, and I looked at several different places, and I came down to the fact that I wanted to go to somewhere that I really knew and trusted, because I do travel, I go out of state occasionally. I want somebody that's gonna have some kind of warranty, or even if I don't buy the tire warranty itself, that I'm just familiar with. So to me, that came down to, I didn't want to order a tire that I had to special order, because I felt like, again, what if I have a flat? What if I have, you name it, there's a problem, there's time on the road. I could be traveling between here and Salt Lake City, and I blow a tire, and next thing I know, to get that exact tire, I'm sitting there for 2 weeks, and I'm getting towed and stupid stuff like that. I didn't want to get a tire I had to special order. I wanted to find something that was at least a day away, if not something that was in stock. Now, through the businesses my wife and I run, we have 11 different vehicles, which I know is not normal, so we just gotten used to going to the same places over and over. So to me, after, again, a good amount of homework, I decided I had to go Costco or I had to go Discount Tire. And at least in my area, Costco didn't seem to have what I was looking for, so really it just came down to, I wanted to buy something that Discount Tire stocked. At least they could stock, at least in their warehouse. As I mentioned earlier, I could get within a day or two if I really needed to, if push became shove. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the Discount Tire whole website has all been redone in the last couple of years. And honestly, it's gotten really user-friendly, and there's a whole lot of tools where you can compare tires back and forth. So let me walk you through what all I compared and why I ended up coming to the Bridgestone that I went with.
So this is actually quite a bit easier to do your research on a laptop, which I did, but I'm gonna still show you what it looks like from my phone, because that was easier to record and put out here on a video. So obviously you just put in what kind of car you have first, which obviously in my case, I have the 24 all-wheel drive Cybertruck, pick the right wheel size, and now I'm ready to go. Next, you're going to fill in a few more basics, which was important to me. Things like your zip code, because then it's going to tell me what is either in stock, but could also be in stock within a few days. Then there was a really cool feature that lets you sort by priority what you were looking for in a tire. So of these 5 categories, I decided to put EV range was most important to me and tread life was the second, then followed by stopping and traction, and lastly, steering precision. And so much of what your tire search is going to come down to is preference. What are you looking for? What are your priorities? So now you can just start scrolling through that whole list, but eventually you can get to where what I think the cool part is. So I'm going to find the tire that I actually bought here, which is that Bridgestone, there it is, the Dueler Ascent. So now I can take this and I can select it and put it in like a comparison mode. And this is what kind of sets Discount Tire up from every other one out there. So the first tire I added to compare with was this Wrangler, but it really has no performance data of any kind on it. So I felt like I wanted to get something that had a little more to compare of because this was maybe either a newer tire or just an unproven tire. And so this next one I'm going to compare is a Michelin Defender. Now what I liked most about the Michelin Defender was the price. From $453 comparing it to a $363. So $90 cheaper is a huge difference. But as you notice in here, okay, it has good ratings, but here's the key spot. The Bridgestone here on the left is going to greatly outperform there, you see in the darker green, in many of the key spots like winter performance, and then to me, which the most important was EV range. It was slightly better there. And to better help gauge tread life, it actually gives you this little tool where you can put in how many average miles you drive in a year, and it will tell you how long it'll last. You can see at my current rate, my Broadzone's going to get me 2.6 years, where it's only going to be a year and 11 months if I were to have gone with that Defender. And that's where the data is so valuable. So for what I'm saving in cost, I'm getting less range, and the tire is going to last me much longer and perform much worse. So I'm not really saving the money I think I am by getting this cheaper tire. All right, so now to add another tire to compare it to. Now on my phone, it's only giving 2. On the desktop, it'll actually give you 4. So that eventually is going to lead me to another Michelin, this Defender Platinum I'm going to kind of draw the comparison to. Now, this Michelin is actually slightly more than the Broadzone I was looking at. And again here, if we compare snow performance, the Bridgestone crushes the competition. However, where the Michelin was a lot better was in the actual life of the tire, considerably better. Now, between these two, there was a lot more similarities. The ride quality was nearly identical with the edge to those Bridgestones. And then, again, the topic is most important to me, the EV range. Again, Bridgestone has the advantage. If you scroll farther down the page, you see all these little specs. So while the Michelin did give me a longer life, it did give a shorter range. And so I don't know if it was really worth the money to me. This next comparison is going to lead me to a Falken Wild Peak, which is, again, a more expensive tire. Again, a really heavy terrain type tire. So right off the bat, you'll see that this Falken tire has really good reviews. It scores high. But then when you get into the winter performance metrics, oh my word, the Bridgestone crushes it. Then this next metric, which again, very important to me, the EV range, again, the Bridgestone crushes this Falken. Now, where the Falken did edge out the Bridgestone was in tire life. It did seem to be a very quality tire as far as long lasting, but it performed worse and it didn't get as many mileage. So I decided to get one more comparison. So we'll look at this Ventura lastly. Now the Ventura was $80 a tire cheaper, so I was rooting for it. But again, it either had much poorer or non-existent winter ratings. Then it was much lower again in the metric that was most important to me, EV range. And then also in tire life, it was about 25% less also.
And that's a whole roundabout way of how I settled on my Bridgestone Duelers. So I think it comes down to you got to do homework before you go into the store. Once you go in, they're just going to sell you what they have in stock. But also, hopefully, you see the importance of doing your homework to finding out what's important to you. To me, I prioritize price, range, winter performance, and longevity of the tire. General performance, as far as 0 to 60 times and handling, control, stopping power, those weren't as important to me because I do still use my truck as a tradesman every day. And that's why when I compared the several, I did 4 of you today, but I did about 8 or 10 of them myself online, side by side, it came out to me that this tire here was the best for the money that still gave me everything I want, which including the looks, it looks great, still gave me a high EV range, still gave me a high tread life, and still handled really well in winter conditions, which again is super important to me here in the mountains of Colorado. And of course, the big question, how much? So these tires were listed at $453, so obviously I got the whole set of 4 of them. Now they were running a special where I got $80 off just for signing in online and actually buying them online. So another thing worth looking into, check them out online because they could be cheaper over the computer than they actually are showing up and buying them at the store. So I did not buy the warranties. So with that $453 times 4 plus taxes and fees and all that, I didn't buy the tire certificate, so it's just the normal warranty that would come with these. I got out the door for almost exactly $1,800. And whereas you're never excited spending $1,800 on tires, I do feel like I got the best for my money and I got a real value. And I'm confident now I got exactly what I want. But the real test will be how long do they hold up for the next year and a half, 2, maybe 2.5, 3 years. We'll see. And one thing I'm gonna do this time is I'm gonna run myself a little bit of experiment. Now, I am gonna rotate my tires at about 7,000, 8,000 miles this time, but I'm gonna try to keep the rear tires elevated at a slightly higher PSI. Now, the truck inside will always tell you it recommends 50, 55 PSI, but it says the maximum on my tires is 80. Now, that still seems excessive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run these up front here, typically at that 55, 60, and I'm gonna run these back here at that 70, 75 range. And I'm gonna see if that matters at all in my tread life, specifically that edge of the tire tread life. And if you subscribe to the channel, you'll see when I eventually update on if that matters or not. And after that 7,000 to 8,000 miles, I rotate them. I'll see what the wear looks like then. And then we'll see if that matters at all, if it's front and back, or if that PSI has more to do with the wear that I actually think it does. So I'm going to show you the PSI here on the screen. First, I want to point out that the TPMS sensors on your tires may not always be totally accurate. In fact, they're usually not, but they're often within maybe 5-10%. So here's my screen here, and there's my PSI. Obviously, you'll see that it recommends 50 PSI in the front and back. So mine are showing 57, 57. They're in the front, and obviously they're on the back at 73 and 74. That's actually very close to what my actual PSI is, but it's actually slightly lower. So my compressor I have here at my house, I set it exactly 78 PSI, and it has a hard cutoff. It's a very expensive compressor, so I very much trust the gauges, and I also have an actual tire gauge on the end of my hose, which also shows 78, despite the fact I'm still showing on my car 73 and 74, so just know if you're trying to gauge yours, it could be a little bit off. My front tires, again, are 57, and on my compressor here at home, I'm showing 61, 62. All right, so let's take a closer look at the Bridgestone now that I've got it here on the truck. As you can see, it's actually a really, really deep tread. This is probably the deepest tread I remember seeing. And then, of course, it still has that aggressive all-terrain on the outsides,
which gives it the rugged look I was trying to keep, but still gives me a tread that's going to last me a long amount of time. Again, in addition to all the specs that really mattered to me, the look was still pretty important at the end of the day. I wanted it to have that rugged look.
So a lot of my search came down to just what was important to me. Now, my younger days, it was always price. But as I bought hundreds of tires over the years, you start to realize that you often get what you pay for, which is definitely the case with tires. And although most vehicles, looks aren't really important, here in the Cybertruck, well, that did play a factor to me. I did care what the tire looked like. And as I mentioned earlier, something that was really important to me specifically was availability. I use my truck day in, day out. I need it for my business. This being down a day or two cost me money, better yet, a week or more. Even then, outside of price, things like tire life, all terrain, all season, what kind of road you're on, what kind of warranty you're looking for. There's a lot of factors in the play. It's just a matter of getting what you want. Even things like road noise is really important to some people, but yet not important to others. So hopefully this short video kept you entertained. If you don't have a Cybertruck of your own, and if you do, and you're wondering how long you'll get, hopefully this helps you decide what you're looking for in your next tire. And as always, I'll keep up on this. Give me 2, 3, 6 months down the road, maybe in a year, year and a half. Fingers crossed, I'd love to get 2 years out of these, but I'll keep you updated how they're wearing, and of course, if I have any problems with them or anything like that. And whether you think 30,000 miles is a lot of miles to get on a 7,000 pound truck, or whether you think you can do better, eventually you'll see a video up here in the corner that will talk about how to maximize tire length, something I've done quite a bit of research and actually real life data on. So click on that video and we'll talk about how we can get the most for our money as far as stretching mileage here on our tires. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.